I was just saying, Stephen, let's do it. We've no music, copyright-free music anymore, so it's just free to rock and roll, really.
Giddy.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome in to our Andor Season 2 review. Stephen, rather late to the party with this here review of Andor Season 2. I don't know why I'm putting spaces in between every single word that I let leave my mouth. I digress. Had some issues with the channel, Stephen, some copyright issues. Channel was actually terminated briefly, and then we came back from the dead, like a certain football club in this area. There's a lot of football clubs that's happened to. Stephen, better late than never though. By the way, my name's John. This is Stephen to the left of me. I'm the host. Stephen's the co-host. This is going to be a slightly, how shall I put it, fractious review experience. There will be no real rhyme nor reason, no structure. It's going to be a free-flowing discussion, Stephen. We're both big fans of Tony Gilroy, of Diego Luna, of the other associated members of the cast of Andor as an experience. And we're just going to get right into it and dive two-footed, Stephen. Start off with perhaps the negative Nancy side of reviewing a show of this nature. It's not all positive. We do love the show. We do love Gilroy's writing. We do love the more serious, adult-themed aspects of the show, the grittiness, the groundedness of it. But inherently, Stephen, with that kind of storytelling, when you're with characters for 12 hours, the best part of, inevitably there's going to be times where it's much slower in pacing. It's not a 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 15-minute space opera. Balls to the wall action. You've got walking fucking dogs, aka Chewbacca, Wookiees, that's what they called them back in the day, walking carpets. You have to slow it down at times. And that does put a lot of people off. Obviously, we were well aware of that, Stephen, coming from season 1. The same thing happened. We were on Ferrix, I think it was, for 3-4 episodes. It was painfully slow at times. Do you think they improved on that aspect in season 2, Stephen? It was slow at times, but do you think that was an aspect they perhaps heard the criticism and tried their best to make it more interactive for other individuals who perhaps didn't like that aspect?
I don't think so, John. I think the structure and the pacing of this was exactly the same as season 1 in every sense, and I don't think it was a case of ignoring the criticisms of the first season and how they planned it, how they paced it, and how it was structured. I think they had a story to tell and they stuck with it, and I don't think Tony Gilroy is the type of person that's easily swayed by fans not liking a certain way. I think he knows the bigger picture, he knows the payoff, he knows where it's going. We all know where it's going, obviously it's going to Rogue One, but in terms of these characters, this is a very character-driven Star Wars series, John, which I think, and I said this, I think, in the last episode, if my memory serves me correct, was that I'm so glad The Mandalorian came first in terms of Star Wars web series, because it conditioned us into, the pacing has to be different, as you said. It can't be balls to the wall, space opera, 2.5 hours, 2 hours. Just at that sort of frenetic pace all the time. It has to slow itself down. It has to marinate with the audience. And you have to connect with the characters as well. And I think, especially in season 2, it was very important for some of the other players that were in season 1, who I felt perhaps maybe not cast to the side. They had important parts, but we just didn't know them well enough to really connect with them because there was so much going on. But you put Andor, season 1 I'm talking about, is the first web series out in 2019, I think, is when The Mandalorian came out, and those first 4 episodes dropped. It would have bombed. People would not have carried on watching it. But this series as a whole, series 1 and series 2, is for a certain audience.
Yeah.
It is an adult orientated audience that it was aimed at. But I don't think the likes of Tony Gilroy's too concerned about that. Perhaps maybe Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm would be, because it's not broad enough. But this was a story that had to be told in a certain way. And I think in terms of the pacing and the structure, I didn't have major issues with it, because we knew what happened in season 1, and I knew that given 12 episodes, it was enough time to really stick the landing. And I think they did it round about episode 8, 7, 8, round about that mark. Because I thought the last 5 episodes were some of the best Star Wars stuff that we've seen. But you need those other 7, 8 episodes leading up to that to really make it count, to feel that impact. And I think they did it well.
Oh, you do, Stephen. And in season 1, they had more of a task on their hands, introducing the side players, the likes of Bix, Luthen, to a lesser extent, the likes of Cyril, because he was a joke character in season 1 for me, tagging along with that little fat Scottish guy from EastEnders fame. He was just he was a joke character in season 1. And we'll get on to the evolution of Cyril. And just the core theme, Stephen, that I've got in my mind, what Tony Gilroy explored. There's a couple of things that I think he explored. Just clear connections to World War II and the resistance. He's came out and confirmed he was heavily inspired. He was paying homage to the French resistance during World War II. And the efforts they did, the sort of guerrilla warfare, extended throughout, what was it, 5 years, 4 years? I can't remember when they actually invaded France. I think it was very early on in the war, 1940 I want to say. So yeah, it was about 5 years of guerrilla warfare. Obviously we don't get to see that level of resistance, we just see bits and bobs of them conspiring, trying to get people from an imperial sort of viewpoint on their side. But Stephen, having said that, man, I mean, we'll get into core themes and all that jazz. The likes of Cyril and whatnot, they had to set those characters up in season 1. So it was a much tougher proposition. And you can almost forgive them for being slow paced, because you're setting up new worlds. This kind of world we live in, gritty, rebellion, various aspects of the Rebel Alliance. You've got the likes of Saw Gerrera, you've got Luthen, the in-between guy, you've got the boots in the ground kind of maverick, mercenary soldier kind of guy in Cassian. You've got Mon Mothma, who's the sort of upper echelons representative of the Rebel Alliance. They laid the groundwork down beautifully, so I could forgive them for that. And to be fair, I'm setting it up like I'm going to stick the knife into Tony for season 2, and I'm continuing that theme of starting slow, but I'm not doing it, because I wasn't even that fussed about it being slow paced in season 2 as well. I said consistently throughout my reactions, stick with it, respect the writing, it'll pay off in the end, they're building something special here. And Stephen, I'm the kind of guy they're looking for in terms of an audience, the ideal person. I love slow burn, drip feeding storytelling. This is my kind of stories. I like the fact that there's no mysticism, there's no force users in there, there's no titanic battle of good versus evil and the entire galaxy hangs in the balance. It's just simple. I mean, it does hang in the balance, but it's simpler people involved. It's politicians, it's wannabe antique dealers who are clandestinely operating in the shadows. It's the little man and woman who are explored in this story. So I'm the perfect person for this show, so I'm not going to stick a knife in at all. I didn't mind the slow burn. It was slow though, and it's perhaps a negative, so I'd be remiss not to mention it.
Yeah, in terms
as
of
a negative.
The tone and structure, John, there was no issues in pacing from both of us. I think both of us are well conditioned into watching very long films, and
there was moments, Stephen, where even I may have cut it out the reactions. There was moments where even we were saying, "Fucking hell."
Yeah, the story at times was a little bit. When Andor was stuck on that planet with those morons, I get what they were doing, John. It was a bad storyline. What they were trying to do was give the other characters a bit more time.
Yeah.
So give Cassian Andor, a situation they can't get out of at the moment, and just put them to the side for one episode while we try and establish these other characters that we were introduced to in season 1. But it was such a didn't go anywhere sort of story. It just did not go anywhere. And
Well,
I did think at first, perhaps maybe these morons are going to be part of the first Rebel Alliance or
yeah, you
something like
said
that.
that, yeah.
I just didn't know
He'll go back
what
for
they were
them.
doing.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
Fuck them. Leave them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was probably being a bit naive because we
Yeah.
know what Cassian Andor's like in Rogue One at the very beginning. Very shrewd, very cold-blooded, and he gets the job done.
He's stylish. He's
Cassian
cool.
Andor jackets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been watching that recently. He's stylish. He's modern. He knows what he wants. Sam Tyler jacket. Cassian Andor jacket. That's an Ashes to Ashes Life on Mars reference if you don't know. Gene Hunt. Your man blanking on his name. Brilliant actor.
Up the Lannister.
Yeah, Philip Lannister. That's the one. Stephen, the aspect of maybe taking Cassian out the way, I understand that, to allow other characters like obviously Dedra, Cyril, Bix to get their day in the sort of sunshine, if you like, the limelight. But what I would say, and it's another negative, I'm going to get out the way because we're getting negatives out the way before we just praise it to the heavens, I'd imagine. And it kind of ties into that. The lack of exploring the relationship between K2SO and Cassian later on in the show. I was fully expecting the last 3 episodes to be heavy with Cassian and K2SO going on missions and working for Luthen, or even the Yavin 4 sort of faction of the Rebel Alliance, the more official faction. But we didn't really get that. We got a brief interaction of him being activated again, and then a year passes, and then there's just little funny moments where they're playing the sort of poker, Star Wars equivalent. Very little building of the character. It feels like that was all done off camera. And that was an aspect I was looking forward to, seeing Alan Tudyk coming in and really building that relationship to give you that sort of jeopardy and to enhance that scene when he is taken out
John,
in Rogue One.
I think knowing Lucasfilm, what they're going to do is that year gap you're talking about, they're going to do an animated series. I think they will. I think they'll do something like that.
Yeah, potentially.
I think they'll get Alan Tudyk to do it because it's just voice work anyway.
Yeah.
I've just got a funny feeling. I did think that myself. I just thought, running in, that last episode is more or less, only maybe days away from Rogue One. So there's not any more established sort of conversations or experiences for Cassian Andor and K2SO that we're going to see. So what you're seeing at the very end of episode 12 is bleeding into the start of Rogue One. So it's that year that you miss out on. They're playing cards. They've, as you said, activated them, and then they're a year later they're playing cards. So there's that missing story there, and I've just got this funny feeling we're going to get an animated series.
I have to mention it. It was something that did rile me a little bit. I felt we could have explored that, but you're probably right, Stephen. They'll do something, comic run or a novel, or even an animated show or something like that. But I just felt it was some of those earlier episodes which were a little bit weaker. I'm not saying they were. I mean, they weren't, in the grand scheme of things, they're setting up Gorman, they're setting up the Imperial Bureau side of things where they're investigating and try to instigate some, I don't know, infighting and rile up the resistance on Gorman. That's all essential for what comes later on. I mean, really early on, episode 1 of season 2, we've literally got Director Krennic in that room, laying down, this is what we need. We need this element. It's really prevalent in Gorman. We'll try and exhaust all other avenues. If not, we're going to, I forget the name of the mining he says we're going to do, but it's like bulge mine, I can't remember. Essentially going to destroy the planet to get the necessary amount of this element. That's all really important moving forward, because you understand why Gorman's so important to the Empire, why they're laying down the law there, why that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back for people like Mon Mothma and other individuals throughout the galaxy, and that ultimately leads to the Rebel Alliance being founded, which leads into the events of Rogue One, into the events of A New Hope. It's all very important in the grand scheme of things. But you could have maybe done, Stephen, I'm greedy. I says in my notes, we could have had 3 more episodes in this fucking show. I'd have took 15 episodes, and 3 then could have been dedicated to the sort of antics of K2SO and Andor. But having said that, Stephen, what we do get, and I did mention it in reaction to the show at some point, can't remember when, is less of a sort of Cassian-heavy experience and more of an ensemble, rebel, alliance, rebellion kind of experience. You've got the likes of, and I'm having to look to my left to see her name again, Claire. Should know it by now, really great character in this season in particular. You've got Claire, you've got Luthen, you've got Mon Mothma, and just really laying the foundation and backstory and situations these characters are in and why they ultimately make the decisions they make at the end of the season. And I says at one point, this shouldn't have been named Andor. Bring in Diego Luna, brilliant actor, charismatic, great character, but just call it something else. Because it's less about Cassian. He's just the sort of, well, living vicariously through him and encountering these other characters through him, but it's not really just about Andor. It's about how this rebellion became a thing. And seeing all that, as I said previously, Mon Mothma at the very top, in the Senate, bouncing off of people who are Imperial spies and fucking working for the Emperor and all the different levels. So in my mind, we could have explored this in a different way. Anyway, we didn't have to explore strictly Cassian and K2SO. We could have had an entirely different fucking show for that, if need be.
Andor was, I'm pretty sure Andor was announced at the same time as the Obi-Wan series. It was that event, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was.
Was it Celebration or Comic-Con?
And I think more people were excited about the Obi-Wan series, if we're all being perfectly honest. And that's nothing against Cassian Andor as a character or Diego Luna as an actor, but he was a secondary character in Rogue One. And that's what you've got to remember. He wasn't the main focus. He wasn't the main character. He was a supporting actor, or supporting character in that story.
No, he was.
But I think, I agree, John. I think they could have renamed this and they could have had a sort of wider scope of things they wanted to do in this time period of perhaps maybe a 10-year period where it could have been a series called Birth of the
Rebellion, the spark.
Something. Yeah.
The spark that lights the fire of a rebellion or whatever.
Yeah, something. No, they could have. I get what you mean, though. They could have done a lot more rather than just focus on Andor, but I think they were playing it safe. They were going with a well-known name at that point as well. I think by that point, Rogue One was only about 4-year-old at the time, so the character was still relevant and still in people's heads at the time. And they could have done a lot more in terms of what we could have had. But
fucking hell, man, Alex so red.
To say that we'll not revisit this time period again at some point in a web series, who knows? Yeah,
sorry, I'm admiring the burn, the sheer redness in my neck. It's extraordinary, really. I look like a Red Skull, but just from the neck. Everywhere else looks normal. Stephen, what I really enjoyed was the fleshing out of the other characters. This is how you tell a prequel story. And I don't want to fire shade or throw shade or fire shots at George and what he did, because I do have an appreciation for the prequel trilogy. I think more and more people are coming round to the positives of it. There is still negatives in there. But he was always anchored down. He had like a 500-ton gorilla on his back, in the sense that we all knew it had to be about Anakin Skywalker, the Skywalker saga. We knew how it played out. And you can only do so much with side characters like Mace Windu and whatnot, and Count Dooku, who we don't know the fates of. Whereas with this...
There's going to be a list of casualties when you're forced into a corner like that, John, and you're right. If we did not focus on the Anakin Skywalker character, he was like crucified for that.
Absolutely.
John, I watched Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma, on an interview not that long ago, where her scenes were cut from Revenge of the Sith for that reason.
Yeah.
George had actually explained to her. She said they had the courtesy of explaining to her why her scenes were cut. And it was because they had to drive the focus more on Anakin, and some of the scenes, which are interesting if you've seen them on the sort of bonus stuff on the DVDs, they don't really fit into the whole grand of what George was trying to do. But it's a tough thing to do prequels, and as you said, I think in terms of the way we are building, and I'm glad we got Rogue One, I'm glad we got Andor, because there was always that jarring element to the storytelling between episode 3 and episode 4. There was just so much of a vibe that was so different, and I think these things help.
And obviously the ingenuity of your man seeing that in the opening screen crawl for A New Hope and deciding there's a story there
John
and
Hill,
telling it, which is just genius. Now, Stephen,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what started it all, but what was I saying there? I've totally lost the plot. I'm not going to lie.
George.
Prequels, that's right, yeah, the prequels. That's what the aspect of this that's handled so well with Gilroy and the other writers. They take side characters like Cyril, like Bix, Claire, Luthen, even your man, now, Wallman to an extent. I didn't really care too much for him, but to be fair, he's still an important character. Lonnie. Characters like Lonnie, who's a sort of inside guy for Luthen in the Imperial Bureau, whatever the fuck they're called, that sort of group. He takes those characters who weren't known about prior to Rogue One, and that's how you introduce a Jeopardy. He brilliantly bonds you with them, and it's something that continues throughout in season 2, certainly with Claire late on. Brilliant backstory of her relationship with Luthen. The stuff with Mon, I mean, we knew Mon Mothma's not going to die, but still the way that they laid down her character, her relationship with her daughter, with her husband, with life on Coruscant, and her having to walk away from it. That's a brilliant way of telling a prequel story. Your main guy, who it's all focused on, we know how he ends, but they just introduce such great acting, such brilliant characters who are pivotal to the story, pivotal to how this whole rebellion starts off, and you don't know what the fuck their fate is. So you're wondering throughout what's going to happen to Luthen, what's going to happen to Claire, what's going to happen to Cyril, what's going to happen to all these characters. That's just brilliant storytelling in a prequel. Absolutely brilliant, and it has you hooked.
You know, and I think bond the audience with these characters, and then there's the stakes. Because we know that Cassian's okay. We know he sees it through to Rogue One. But as you said, Vix, you start to care for her because the writing's giving you time to bond with her. And the same with Cyril. I thought they handled Cyril's sort of evolution as a character really well. He was a very ambitious, up-and-coming officer of the law. And then he saw the opportunity to, obviously link up with Deidre. And, he saw those opportunities to climb the ladder in the Empire. And we saw that. But when he saw the atrocities, I thought it was fantastic acting.
Stephen, that episode where the sort of courtyard stuff on Gorman.
Kyle Solar. Yeah, the courtyard stuff was
incredible.
Phenomenal.
There's a good minute-long shot of just Cyril looking around in complete horror at people being massacred, and it just lingers on his face, and it's just incredible acting. I would see he is probably the standout transformation in this entire show. He goes from being a complete joke character that you're like, what is this guy doing? He's slurping from his sort of cereal bowl in his mother's house. Like, the fucking point of this guy, what are we doing here? To where he is,
John, that's the point of it, isn't it? It's all about levels.
Oh, but you care so much for him, Stephen. I mean, when he died, I'm like, fucking hell, that's a terrible way for that character to die. I wanted him to flip over, become pivotal, and redeem himself. But then the stuff, you can see the conflict within him. It's almost like what you're doing with Anakin on a grander scale in the prequel trilogy, where he is kind of seen the light. He's broke up with Dedra and he's almost cutting ties with the Empire in sheer disgust at what they're doing in Gorman. But then he sees Cassian and it all rises again, and he's fighting.
Yeah,
beating the shit out of him.
Again, a phenomenal actor, and one of the standout moments for me with Dedra was after the massacre. She was trying to sort of shed her uniform off in some way, like the disgust of her actions. It was just a great performance. And once again, John, I've got a funny feeling we're going to see Dedra again in some series. I think she's going to become a rebel. I really do think she's going to become a rebel. I don't know.
She's such a bastard, though. She's such a
I wonder where she's ended up,
I know, because she's been left in that fucking prison, hasn't she, of course?
You're right, yeah.
But Stephen, I mean, that's something I've got down in my notes. I don't know if you want to talk about it now. I've not even sort of shared this with you. I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think, aside from the clear connections to World War II and stuff like that, and gaining inspiration from historical events of the tyranny, the dictatorship of the Nazi Third Reich in World War II, and right down to just a need for order and hatred for other cultures and want to destroy things that they don't think fits their ideal for the world. You've got that with Empire in this show. You've got the Order, Linus, if you like. But I think sacrifice, that's what I've wrote, is for me the key theme in this season. You think of all the characters, I mean, I'm looking to my left here. We know Andor sacrifices it all in Rogue One. But in this particular season, he gives up his relationship with Bix. He disconnects from Luthen, tries to save him at the end, doesn't know he's passed. Bix gives up her relationship with Cassian, thinks it's going to be sort of happily ever after. She's got his son. She's sacrificed. Cyril sacrifices, and to an extent where he cuts ties with Dedra. Dedra even has some elements of sacrifice. Luthen gives his life for the cause.
Paraphrasing John, but
so
it
many.
was said. It was I mean, I don't know if it's Saw Gerrera or Luthen or both, but someone said along the lines, and again I'm paraphrasing here, was we're fighting for a cause where we will not see the revolution or something. You know, I can't remember obviously what but that was the sort of gist of it. You know, they know they're not going to see. They're not going to see the New Republic, but they're fighting for it. You know,
it's true. And
that's sacrifice.
I think that's the key theme, Steve. You see it with Claire as well. Yeah. She built this brilliant relationship. It was a complicated relationship with Luthen, but he's almost like a father figure, and she has to kill him. And she's given up so much. Vel Sarfer as well with her love interest. I forget the character's name, but obviously in Gorman she's killed by a stray blaster bolt. Throughout this entire show, what's she called? Cinta, yeah. Also, she experiences loss, has to sacrifice that to an extent. Even Lonnie, he loses his life, passing on this key piece of information about Jeddah and obviously Galen Erso and Krennic and the Death Star and stuff like that. I just think it's a key theme that's explored throughout the entire season. Sacrifice, doing what's necessary for the greater good. Ultimately, if you want to face up against someone like the Emperor and the Empire and free the galaxy of tyranny, then you have to sacrifice so much of what matters to you to make that happen. And it's something that obviously there's connotations with modern day life as well in there. But this is, again, the brilliance of Tony Gilroy's writing for me. It's not... He's not beating you over the head with like a 2x4 with barbed wire and telling you, this has got connections to modern day things, this has got connections to the past. It's subtle in the way that he handles it, and that's the difference between
John.
that and
There's always going to be those connections, though. You know, there's always going to be those connections. One thing that's guaranteed with war is it always plays out the same way.
Yeah.
It always has the same end result in terms of, it doesn't matter what side, you know, who wins or who loses, it's the same result. Loss of life and, you know, just the way these things play out, there's always a reason behind invasion. There's always reason behind, you know, countries going into other countries and, you know, occupying them. But it's not just a case of there's one sort of black and white scenario. There's always grey areas in war, and there's always politicians working in the background for something that they want.
Yeah.
And you see that in, you know, all over the world. Closer to home, probably the Troubles in Ireland. We can probably relate to in terms of what we see in this series, you know, with occupying Gorman.
Yeah.
There'll be reasons for that obviously we know because we're privy as audience members, but as, you know, in that world, just the propaganda that goes on, and that's a big part of war as well. And I think Gilroy really tapped into all those elements of war really well.
Stephen, would you say that, I mean, I've seen a lot of, and I agree with what you says there, I've seen a lot of criticism of this show and its fan base constantly referencing it being a more serious Star Wars story, it being an adult-driven Star Wars story. People saying, what does that mean? It's more adult-driven because it's got attempted sexual assault scenes and things like that in it.
Well, John, I think we should talk about that. Yeah. I think we should talk about that very sequence, that so much so that a certain YouTuber was so offended by that choice of tone that he abandoned watching the rest of it.
I think it was more... Is
dramatic.
Is that Star Wars Theory by any chance?
Well, yeah.
I think it was
I was very surprised about because
It was.
I don't know if it was attention seeking or not. I don't know.
I mean, the scene wasn't that bad,
like
Stephen.
I like his channel as well.
It wasn't that fucking bad, the scene. I mean, it wasn't. I understand what he's saying. I don't think it does have a place in Star Wars for what it's worth. I do think that they've always hinted at things like that, with Shmi Skywalker and obviously Leia and Jabba's palace. There was always little hints, but it never really went there with it. It was never explored on screen. But it wasn't that bad. I mean, ultimately, he attempted to sexually assault Bix, but Bix was strong enough physically and mentally to fight the character off. And I think the way that Tony and the writing team handled that was to turn that on its head and make that a positive for Bix, because it reinforced her as a person and strengthened her, and she went to Coruscant, she faced her demons, ultimately took out that guy who was obviously intruding in her mind and whatnot. Again, I forget the character's name. So that was a flashpoint for Bix, but it ultimately proved to be pivotal for her character. She grew from that, and look at it at the end. Obviously, she's not got Cassian, but she's got a new born baby. She's free. She looks content. You said it, Stephen. She looks happy. Like she's found peace. And they used that as a character driving moment for Bix. Bix goes through a lot in this season. She's got a lot of demons. She's taking like drugs to fall asleep, and it's dark. But that's life.
The sequence was to portray the Empire as evil. This was an individual choice who just happened to work for the Empire. We know how evil they are. It doesn't have to be explained in that sequence. That, as you said, I think it was about empowering the female character in this scenario, this horrible scenario that she was put in. And I don't think it overstayed its welcome. I don't think it really overshadowed that episode or the rest of the series, for that matter, because I think it was just a gentle reminder that, a lot of people like Star Wars for what it is. It's a sci-fi space opera, whatever, and it's a lot of it should be surface level. But when you're using the word war and your sort of theme and in your franchise, then there is room for more adult orientated themes. And this is not going to appeal to everyone. I've said this, John, and I've said this, all along when certain animated series have come out, or perhaps maybe series like The Acolyte, etc. They're for a certain member audience. They're not for me. It's not designed for me. I'm nearly a 50-year-old guy. I'm not going to sit and watch animated series. I don't have the time to do that. But I think Star Wars has to do this. I think they have to, in terms of Lucasfilm, they have to do this for Star Wars. They have to branch out and not try and be broad every time. They have to appeal to certain demographics.
Yeah.
I think they did it right in this sense. Not everyone's going to like this. They're not going to like it. We're not going to kid ourselves on that they're going to continue ploughing $300 million on a web series for a limited audience. They're not going to keep doing that. This is, and we've said this is going to be a one-off. I don't think we're going to see the likes of Andor again.
Because it's such brilliant writing and character development and storytelling. And it's Star Wars done differently, Stephen. And I maintain if you want Star Wars as a brand to evolve and have longevity with a new generation of fans and of different kind of people, then you need to explore different genres within the Star Wars brand. You can't just keep doing 2-hour lightsaber battle, space operatic kind of storytelling. You have to go more serious, gritty. You have to go and explore perhaps comedy. You need to do something fresh and original. Gilroy not being a Star Wars fan, seeing that being a criticism levelled against him as an individual as well. How can he tell a Star Wars story if he's not a Star Wars fan? Because he's a great storyteller. He's got life experiences and he's tapping into those experiences and historical events to tell a story under the guise of Star Wars. You don't have to be a Star Wars fanatic, know every single piece of fucking lore and mythology and detail to be able to tell a compelling story in Star Wars. He done it brilliantly. And it's just a shame we're not going to see that continue, because I think that's a misstep from Lucasfilm. I think in time this show will be looked at as being a real high watermark for the actual entirety of Star Wars as a franchise. Much like Shawshank. I don't want to bring Shawshank Redemption up. It became a meme at this point, how good it is. But when it came out, no one fucking watched it. It got no accolades as a critical sort of entity. There was no Oscars, there was nothing. It barely get watched in the theatres. And then in time, it was seen to be this masterpiece, a brilliant film. I think, maybe not to that extent, but I think Andor will be looked at as being a great, great moment for this franchise, because you look at the acting talent in there. Stellan Skarsgård, right off the bat, if I can actually speak coherent English. Stephen, I mean, that's the best acting I've seen in Star Wars from that character. And even Genevieve O'Reilly. But certainly Stellan.
Together, John, any scenes they were in, I think everyone was so fixated and glued to what they were saying in terms of their dialogue, you know, and there's so many. I mean, you talk about memes, I think that one, "How nice for you," is going to be a meme.
That's such a great moment.
Such
a great moment. I don't understand what you're saying. How nice for you. He knows what he's saying. He knows what has to be done. He's not living in Cloud Cuckoo Land. She does, but she doesn't want to acknowledge it or admit that that's what's necessary. You have to be protected. You can't have people blackmailing you, people being a threat to you and this sort of fledgling rebel alliance. Such a great character, Luthen. Stephen, I suppose we could explore individual characters briefly. I understand we're running out of time and we've been talking for fucking nearly 40 minutes and we're just scratching the surface of this show. I could talk about it for hours on end. But Luthen as a character, Stephen, obviously we knew he was going to go out in a blaze of fire. We knew this guy wasn't going quietly. How did you think they handled the death? Was it something, I say a blaze of fire, it wasn't really a blaze of fire for Luthen. I mean, I think he stabbed himself, and maybe someone suggested in their comments that perhaps he took poison or something. I don't think he did personally. I think he just stabbed himself in the stomach, I believe. How did you like the handling of Luthen's death and just the character's evolution? We weren't aware, Stephen, that Stern had a stroke prior to the filming of this second season. And I don't think he was as prominent as in season 1 in terms of speaking parts. I think he took a slight step back. But I thought the main character was really interesting, man. Again, he was one of the highlights of the show.
I'm glad that even in death he was in control of that. It wasn't decided by the Empire. They did the best to keep him alive, and obviously blanking on the character name, Claire, obviously had to get in there and obviously end his life, which was such a bittersweet moment for both characters, and certainly for the audience as well. It was very emotional. But no, I thought they handled it well. I wouldn't like to have seen him going out very much the way that we're going to be seeing everyone practically from Alderaan just going out in a blaze, just a boom, Bail Organa, the way he's going out. They've done him dirty. But I think even Benjamin Bratt coming into that role, I thought it was great. I thought he did really well. It wasn't really jarring at all. Jimmy Schmitz will always be Bail Organa, but I think I think Benjamin Bratt coming in was fantastic. But I think in terms of Luthen's, the way they handled his death, it was a great episode. I thought the flashbacks back and forth between the two characters was very interesting, and it was a very brave decision to do that near the end of the season as well, rather than at the sort of start. But I thought it was great. I just thought it was great to see the backstory of this relationship between both.
It was a great bit of dual storytelling, Stephen, because it showed you a side to Luthen we hadn't seen until that point. He was very callous, cold, calculating, would do what was needing to be done, completely relentless. If someone steps out of line, I don't know why that flickered there, by the way. Fuck knows. That's concerning. Never happened before. If they stepped out of line, he'd get rid of them. We've seen in that episode.
The Naboo scene, John. The Naboo scene was really, really good. Really, really good, the dialogue.
But the way his relationship with Claire, he's seen a different side. When we first see him, he's having real difficulties. I think they're committing atrocities on that planet. And you can see it's eating him up. We see a more softer, gentle side. Maybe not gentle, he's a fucking very high-ranking officer in this army, in this war. But we see a different side to him. He alluded to it with Bix, that he had done the same thing. Once the drugs wear off, then the dreams come back worse than before, something along those lines. But I just thought that was brilliant storytelling. It was much like Thanos and Gamora in Infinity War, I think it was, where we see the backstory of the relationship, and it just adds so much depth, not just to Luthen but to Claire as well. And then moving forward, Claire dealing with the grief, feeling out of place on Yavin. Just brilliant acting from the two characters. Just brilliant. And even the scene, he's deaf. The scene just before leading up to him taking his life, well, try to take his life. He doesn't die at that point. But his interactions with Dedra, it's just a little use of language from the character that I just adore. The guy's just got away with words, the character and Sterling, where he says there's currently two, what is it he says again? Two objects, I can't remember, pieces of questionable, I can't remember the exact word he uses, provenance, I think it was. Questionable provenance.
Right away.
And he's talking about those two. It's just the intelligence, how sharp of wit he is. He's so switched on to everything that's happening, threats, perceived threats, and just a brilliant, brilliant character. One of my absolute standout characters in the entire show. I love that sort of duology within characters. I loved it in Arrow to an extent. I loved it with Batman. I continue to love it with Batman, where you've got one face for the public and another face for other individuals who know you on a more personal level. I just think that's one of the most interesting things I've seen explored in Star Wars period. And some of his lines were just fucking epic, man. Epic.
That sequence between Luthen and Claire when they came out of the... You remember when she had to deactivate the listening device?
Yeah.
From that piece? When they're leaving the building at the very end, he does say that line, "My face hurts from all the smiling."
Yeah. It's just his interactions. He's kind of laughing and he's putting on this persona and he's having to deal with, he hates Krennic.
Hand as well. When he's laughing, he kind of goes like his hand.
It's everything. To be fair to Dedra, she had a great line. Something about a ridiculous wig. And it is. It's just the fact that everyone knows it's a fucking wig. He's fooling nobody. I just loved that. Part of me thought he was pulling it off, but then Dedra just destroys him and says, "Look, it's a ridiculous wig. What are we doing here?" Just some of the interactions throughout were great, man. With Luthen. Luthen for me is, I mean, I'm kind of spoiling who's my favourite character in this to an extent, but I just love Stellan Skarsgård, man. The guy's been about for years. I've seen him in a whole host of different things. I think he was in a BBC show at one point, or ITV show. He's just a tremendous, tremendous actor. Brilliant.
Classically trained actor. Yeah. You've seen the range that he does, from the Marvel stuff, obviously, but obviously in Mamma Mia as well, a musical. I thought it was a standout in that as well. And yeah, I mean, just obviously in June, playing definitely a different character to what we're used to. Yeah, just a phenomenal actor all round. Very versatile.
Try to find the show he was on, incidentally. I'm sure he was on a show. I may be talking absolutely shite. It's not the first time, to be fair. But anyway, he's a great actor anyway. It doesn't matter, neither here nor there. In terms of other... I mean, Stephen Andor almost did get sidelined for large parts of his own show in Season 2. But when he did come back, he certainly came back with a bang when it was necessary. There was one particular moment that stood out for me, and it was the sort of walk on Yavin, where he does this walk to the ship and the music's swelling and you're seeing all the various people who are now settled on Yavin. You've realised you've been on the journey with them where they've been to this point. Mon Mothma's there, she's with normal people, if you like, and she's mingling and seems kind of happy but also sad. You see her husband.
Do you know what I like about that though? Do you know what I like? It's just that sort of sequence of all these important figures all on the one planet of Yavin, and it just adds more depth and weight to A New Hope. That Yavin for me used to be just another rebel base, but there's so much significance to it now through this web series and all these people that have lived their lives on this planet and the way that the Empire are homing in on it.
It's a soul sanctuary.
Yeah.
It's their one sanctuary. It's the only place they can be. And the fact, like you said, that Tarkin and Vader and the Death Star's homing in on them at the end of A New Hope. And that's really all they've got. If that gets wiped out, it's gone. The rebellion's snuffed out. It adds so much depth. And Steve, that's what we said time and again about Rogue One and then this by connection. If you nail it, what it does for the original trilogy. It adds so much depth. Well, maybe A New Hope in particular, but even characters like Luke, I'm thinking when you're going to the base and you're having four, you're seeing all of these prominent figures. Like, they even mentioned, oh God, what's he called again? I'm going to blank his name. Terrible. General Daldona or something. I'm blanking on his name. I'm throwing these references out. You see these characters in A New Hope, and I'm immediately thinking, Luke's on Tatooine just now. He's probably working on like fucking power converters at the Toshi station. It's not long until he's going to bump in to the droids, and it's all going to kick off, and we're not far away. They're just connecting all the dots so brilliantly. It's just brilliant storytelling. And again, it comes from one guy looking at the opening crawl. That's just ingenious creativity. That's what we're lacking in the brand as a whole. And there's just vacuous, politically driven shite getting churned out. We need more people, and it's why I maintain we need to get away from this Dave Filoni nonsense. He has to be the next head of Lucasfilm. He doesn't. We need people like Tony Gilroy, who first and foremost, brilliant creative minds, writers, producers, people who are disconnected from it. You then hire the people who are passionate about Star Wars, but you're a third party, disconnected, independent. You can make a calculated decision about whether it works or not. You need people like that involved. That's why it works so well, because it's grounded in reality. But first and foremost, it's just fucking brilliant writing and great storytelling. Mon Mothma, Stephen, I mean, that's another character. We explore early doors. I think it's, I'm blank on the name now, Chandrila. And her relationship with her daughter, the wedding, her husband, just dealing with all these self-absorbed, masturbatory fucking arseholes on Coruscant. You can see it paining her physically, because she realises what's at stake. She's trying her best to twist everyone, to get everyone to see light, but they're just so self-obsessed and worried about their own affairs, if you like. And there's one great scene in particular, she's trying to get them all to vote, and they're just poo-hooing it and saying, nope, can't do it. Even the Gorman guy says he can't do it. I just thought the way they explored her character was brilliant. Her evolution, again, the sacrifice she makes. She, in a sense, walks away from her daughter, her family, everything. Albeit her husband's a twat anyway. But just brilliant the way they explored her. I mean, she's fucking mentally drunk at one point on Chandra. Just completely out her face, drunk.
There's a very short sequence in Return of the Jedi where we're introduced to Mon Mothma, played by a different actress, but
you wouldn't believe it.
You can see the weight of all this on her, on just that small scene. And just, if you go back and watch Return of the Jedi just for that very specific sequence, you sense that sort of regret and weight and everything that she's lived through, just through that, you know. And it's something that about Star Wars, and particularly obviously with George Lucas creating these characters and writing these characters initially, and I think he did a really good job in doing that through Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness one. Just having that weight of the past, which
Steve,
we've not seen, it's not been written, but he knows, he gives them a backstory.
That's why you employ the actor.
How you react, and you see it in Genevieve O'Reilly as well. Just the way that she knows that, obviously, Caroline, I can't remember the actress's name from Return of the Jedi who plays Mon Mothma, but she's would have saw that scene and she would have known, I've got to lead up to that performance and get to that. So, and I think Tony Gilroy and his writing team had that probably in mind.
Caroline Blakiston.
Yeah.
That's the one, yeah. My God, she's still alive. Fucking hell, man. Wow.
Yeah.
92. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Stephen, I mean, what he says about Obi-Wan, you're spot on. I've seen videos where they mash it up with the prequel trilogy, and he's talking about he was a great friend, a cunning warrior and a great friend. Darth betrayed and killed your father, and then you get to see the brilliance of the acting from Alec Guinness when he didn't have a clue what was going to come afterwards, that they were going to fill in the gaps, and then it just works beautifully. You see it all. It's fucking genius from George, and brilliant. It just shows you how good an actor Alec was, but we all know that anyway, certainly people from here. And to be fair, it's the same with Genevieve. I thought she'd done a great job, and again, you can go back and maybe mash that up certain characters and you'll see them connecting the dots brilliantly. Certainly with Diego, I mean, some brilliant stuff going on with him. like I says, I've not really referenced him much because he did almost get sidelined in his own show for much of this. But there was some standout moments still. But Stephen, in terms of performances, I think we went through. I mean, even Major Partagaz. I mean, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. The way he went out listening to the monologues of, I don't know if it was Donny. I can't recall who it was, or whether it was your other little guy who you referenced. I forget his name even now. Jacob James Bestwick, the attendant.
Yeah, supervisor Hirt.
Yeah. I don't know if it was his, because he'd not long bit the bullet at the hands of K2SO and those useless sort of soldiers. But he went almost, the last thing he heard before he took his own life was the sort of dulcet tones of somebody talking about the inevitability of the rebellion and how the Empire was doomed to fail, because the more they exerted control and orderliness, the more that it sort of turned people against him. I just thought that was an interesting character as well. I thought Anton Lesser throughout was great. You didn't really realise the extent of how connected he was until you introduce a Krennic and you see the interactions between those two. Then you realise that he's actually deeper connected than maybe he was letting on. And just some of the interactions, we've not even spoken about Krennic either, man. Some of the stuff with fucking Orson Krennic in this. What an actor Ben Mendelsohn is, man. Just the subtle little facial sort of expressions he gives off, the laugh, the chesty sort of laugh he's got. He's such a great character, man. You almost feel sorry for him. What happens in Rogue One? He gets shown up by Tarkin.
What happened to him in Rogue One happened to Dedra and Andor. That's exactly, it's a chain of command, and obviously they know their levels. But yeah, I mean, Ben Mendelsohn, bringing him back and the way he was utilised, I mentioned this in watch-alongs, I felt they just didn't overexpose him in any way, and I'm glad they didn't. I think putting him into episode 1 of season 2 was quite bold. I thought, well, geez, we're going right into this with this character, that's great. But they had to, obviously, for the narrative and getting to the point of why they're going to Gorman. But we didn't see him for a few episodes afterwards, and then just that relationship that he had with Dedra and the relationship he had with
Partagaz.
The supervisor as well with the bald head.
I hated that fucker. Yeah, the guy that says looked like a manager from Bell's Hill. Yeah. Just what are you doing here? Well, we're here to have a fucking party.
Partagaz as well. Yeah. It was interesting to see this interaction with Krennic, because in Rogue One he was such down the pipeline. I feel like he was a small fish,
Well, at the end he was at the start.
And this he was the big fish, in the small pond. So there was a bit of role reversal for him in terms of his responsibilities and his sort of chain of command, and the way respect as well was certainly more evident in Andor than it was in Rogue One. It was a bit of a joke figure, and I think it's because Tarkin kept him at his level.
At the start, I thought he was pretty serious at the start and menacing when he's landing on the planet and laying the law down to Galen. I'm pretty sure that's how. I've not seen it in a while, Rogue One, but he did progressively get the Domhnall Gleeson treatment, the General Hux or whatever the fuck that character's name was, where he became a bigger and bigger joke. It's not necessarily down to Orson, it's down to the fact that Grand Moff Tarkin is an absolute devil. Guy's a monster. You hear it, what he was up to in this, landing transporters or ships on top of people. Guy is an evil bastard of a character, and he is second only to Palpatine, the Emperor. So, I mean, there's levels. It's like, there's nothing wrong with being below the second in command in the entire Empire. I mean, if a lot of people are below him, even Vader. So if the terrifying 6'6" guy in the black suit with the big red lightsabers below Tarkin, then believe me, don't be crying about it that you're below him. I understand he's come in and took your life's work away from you, but just deal with it. He didn't know, and that's why he ended the way he did. Stephen, I see we've got a comment from Mark Streeter. The encouraging thing is that I've seen people reviewing and praising this show who are not even Star Wars fans. That in itself is a sign of the quality of the show. I completely agree. But the thing is, Star Wars fans are that anal. There's a faction of Star Wars fans that won't like that. They won't like the fact that non-Star Wars fans are getting enjoyment out of it because they want it all for them.
Yeah.
They'll
Weird
resent that. They'll resent the fact that fucking they like it. That means it's not proper Star Wars. What is proper Star Wars then? What is it? Fucking Gungans and bigger fish eating bigger fish, eating bigger fish? Is it Ewoks on some fucking nondescript jungle planet? I understand it's... What the fuck is the name of that planet I'm blanking on it? The moon planet of...
Andor.
Endor, that's the one. I've not seen it in years, man. Fucking Disney's ruined Star Wars for me. I've not went back and watched the original trilogy in about 4 years, if not 5 years. I used to watch every year, multiple times a year. I was taking photographs and posting them up in Star Wars forums. Oh, this is a lovely little scene from Empire or whatever. I'm fucking obsessed with it. Disney's ruined it. And I used to get plaudits. Oh, that's a great shot you've captured there. You've got a great eye.
Net.
Yeah, that's probably the one. Yep. Now I'm at the point where I'm forgetting the name of fucking Endor. That's what Disney's done to me. That's what they've done to me. But what is Star Wars? We're reverse engineering 3 movies from the late 70s and 1980s and try to do something different to reignite a dying franchise. That's what it is. The franchise is dead in its arse. We need more content like this. Less lightsabers. We don't need lightsabers all the time. We've had a lot of them. Sometimes you just need to see what the ordinary man and woman are doing in this galaxy, and we certainly get it in this and in Rogue One. Stephen, standout character, man. I'm going to throw you under the bus and ask you this right off the bat. What is your standout character in season 2?
It's probably Luthen again, John. It's probably my standout character. It's Stellan Skarsgård. And I thought Genevieve O'Reilly was fantastic as Mon Mothma. Just the way that played out, but we always knew her character and we knew where it was going to go. But I felt she just dealt with the situation, and her performance, the speech, John, was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, you read that, yeah.
Emperor Palpatine, one of probably the standout moments, but just something about Luthen and just the way that everyone speaks about him in terms of his work and what he'll do and what lengths he'll go to was very intriguing. And it was something that we very unique in Star Wars to an extent, that we don't have a character that's just black and white. There's a lot of grey areas with Luthen. He has got conflict within him in terms of his emotions, because he's telling everyone else that having these emotional sort of connections to other people will be your downfall, whereas with Claire, he's got that emotional. Yeah. He might not show it, but there's definitely emotional contact there and connection in terms of their relationship, father and daughter almost. So there's a lot of contradictions in the character. He was never perfect, and just Stellan Skarsgård's performance, every scene I think he was in, you just paid attention to everything he was saying, and just and as you said, just having that sort of double act about him as well. The sort of front he had to put on in front of all, the sort of high, I don't know what you call them. The
sort of pompous, privileged upper crust of Coruscant.
Sort of people, the sort of higher class, and just seeing him play that out was very comical in a sense. Just the smiling and the laughing and the rolling of the hands, all that, the theatricals, and then just some of his dialogue is just.
Stephen, it's even the laugh. First time we see Luthen in this show. The first time we see Luthen in this show is in Jandrilla in the wedding, and it's a fantastic one shot. Following, I believe, Mon Mothma and maybe even Val or Vel. And you hear his laugh. You even said it during the reaction. That's Luthen. And then it pans round and that's him there. Just he's got a way about him, the character, so theatrical.
Yeah.
And the way he presents himself. And every aspect of the character's just brilliantly brought to life by Stellan Skarsgård. I agree, Stephen. It's Luthen for me as well. Cyril's a close second. I thought Kel Saw done a tremendous job with Cyril in this season. The way that he developed the character. You see the real angst and the emotion and the conflict within. His relationship with his mother as well. He's going in line in the fetal position at one point in his bed because he's been belittled and criticised. Thought the way Dedra handled that was great as well, by the way. That was a brilliant scene. Their relationship was demented. I don't know what was going on there. It was romantic, but then it was almost like a puppeteer controlling a puppet. It was just weird, but it worked to an extent. I thought even Bix. I mean, Bix was a great character in this. There was some brilliant characters, but for me, Luthen's a standout in the entire show, and it's why ultimately I get back to what I said previously, that you really could have named this show anything other than Andor. I mean, I'm not doing down Diego. Diego's fucking brilliant. He's just there. He's always there in the background or in the foreground doing something. Brilliant presence and personality. Great character. Love the character. Very Donald Trump there. Great character. Love the character. I need to do that wishy-washy. I can't do him, and I don't want to do him. He's a bellend. But for me, Luthen, a big tango bellend. But for me, Luthen is the standout character in the entire show, and it's no surprise you've got the best actor in the entire show portraying him. It's incredible what happens when you bring actors like that in to a TV show. And I'm almost reluctant to call it just a TV show because it's costing about the same as major blockbuster movies. But Stephen, technical aspects of this show, I kind of hinted at it there with the one-shot stuff in Chandrila. I thought that was one of the standout things in this season. I think they really elevated the visuals, the set design, the production went up a level, even on season 1. And season 1 was fine. I mean, you had the stuff with the dam in Scotland, some beautiful visual moments, but some of the set designs were absolutely exquisite, the way they were crafted, the costume work, some of the camera work was phenomenal. There was that one scene in Chandrila, had soft bokeh going on, it would focus on someone, then come away. It was just brilliantly crafted. Some of the stuff they'd done with Mon Mothma in particular, where they'd be fixating on 2-3 people, she'd turn around and face the camera, and her face would drop. And they'd done a brilliant job of relaying the emotions, what was going on internally with Mon in this show, and it was all down to great camera work. So I thought on a technical level, show was absolutely outstanding. It almost stole the show out with the actual writing and development.
Some of the locations were fantastic, and the cinematography was, as you said, was just on point. And in terms of obviously capturing the emotions, they got it. I think they nailed it. The volume, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
You knew when that was used and when it wasn't used. There's something about the volume that I don't know what it is. There's always a surrounding wall they've got to do, and it kind of dips down. And you saw that in Gorman in the plaza.
Yeah.
And also sort of the bits outside on sort of ground level in Coruscant, you could tell were obviously volume stuff going on. There's something about it. It's a spectacular thing they're using. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not, but you know when they're using it, and I think it's probably because we're that used to the way it was utilised on The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan series as well.
Yeah, the source.
Yeah, very condensed. Yeah.
Little layer.
It was great.
It's fucking terrible, isn't it? What did they do with Obi-Wan, man? I mean, that is just... You get Ewan McGregor coming back to portray a character. You get Hayden Christensen coming back. Let's fixate on a 10-year-old Princess Leia.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Leia, then. Yeah.
I don't understand it. Score was phenomenal, Stephen, as well. Oh, Jesus, man. Some brilliant stuff going on musically in this show. The stuff with the walk near the end, phenomenal. Just brilliant. The way they did little things with the theme at the start of each episode, there was always a subtle variation in music. I know in the first season it was parts of the theme until at the end it all came together. Just technically a masterpiece, an absolutely phenomenal piece of TV. Final thought, Stephen. I mean, I can't really think of anything else to touch upon at this point.
And I think in terms of the overall thing, I think they stuck the landing, and I don't think I would have done too much differently. Probably maybe we would have extended it out to maybe 2 or 3 more episodes, just to have that sort of establishment with Cassian Andor and K2SO. But I understand that it's not necessary. It's stuff that you can just make up in your head, or perhaps, as you said, release it in a comic book and we can cover it there. But I think in terms of the overall sort of arc from episode 1 of season 1 right through to episode 12 of season 2, I think in terms of consistency, they got it right. There was some sort of filler in there we mentioned, which probably could have been done a little bit better or led to something differently. And we understood the reasons why they did certain things. But I think in terms of the writing, character development, and character study as well, was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Production was, I think, every penny of that 300 million was well spent. It was just a glorious, good-looking production from start to finish in terms of visuals and audio. And just performances. If you were to ask me that my top 5 performances, it would be Stellan Skarsgård, probably Genevieve O'Reilly, and then maybe Diego Luna, and then perhaps maybe your man that played Kyle Soller.
Yeah, he was.
And then probably
great, yeah.
Denise Gough.
Yeah, Denise Gough. Yeah, Denise always had this sort of manner. It was like she was gouching all the time. I don't think that's what it's called, gouching. It's like, I mean, I'm not a druggie by any means, but when you're sort of fixing or like rattling after taking amphetamines, it's kind of, she always like doing a little dance. She was always doing that, to the point where I thought she was on drugs. There's a lot of weird little mannerisms from Denise in this show. The moment you spoke about after Gorman, her hands shaking, it's like, what's going on with this character? She's falling apart. But
if you see her out of character, even her IMDb picture, she's a stunning woman as well. But they just done her dirty.
No, I mean, Stephen, I seen the premiere. I was searching up for the premiere photos for some reason. I can't remember why. And I seen Adriana Arjona as well. I mean, Bix looked pretty good in the show, but fucking hell, different gravy in real life. So it would be fair, they'd done a few of them dirty, including Diego. Diego was nowhere near what, I mean, look at that photograph of him in IMDb. Man looks like a Casanova. It's extraordinary. He actually looks like Salman Khan in the Tiger series when he's under sort of disguise.
Are we allowed to mention that?
Yeah, but yeah, no, we're not allowed to probably get struck again. Stephen, one thing I want to say before I round it up is that there's one last negative, and it's, I believe, a little droid's called B2EMO, a little dog droid. Cassian. No. That little fucker. They done him dirty.
Yeah.
Cassian done him dirty. I mean, I viewed him as being like a Labrador retriever.
Yeah.
And he came back to that planet. He'll come back. I know he'll come back. He came back, didn't even speak to him. Buggered off. Never had an interaction again with that droid. His childhood droid. I don't even know if it is. But droid had a great relationship in season 1. Just abandoned him, fucked off and left him. Ridiculous behaviour, Cassian. Ridiculous. But Stephen, I can't really... Cassian, I can't really add much more than what you've said. I'll say that for me, this is what Star Wars should be. This is high calibre writing. All the aspects that you would want from this kind of TV show are there. It's just political drama, it's political thriller, I'm just reading the tags off TV at this point. Slow dripping, brilliant storytelling. It really does reward audiences for their patience and ability to stick with the slower moments in the show, because if you take it all in, you stick by it, then the payoff you get at the end is absolutely brilliant. And that's why I love the likes of Ari Aster in terms of film directing, because he does the exact same thing. Things you think are monotonous, that are boring, if you just keep your eyes opened and watch it to the end, you will be rewarded. And that's certainly the case here from Tony and the people involved in this show. Thoroughly enjoyed it. For me, this is what Star Wars has to evolve into. You can have the more original kind of content, space opera, but there has to be a place for this kind of serious, grittier, more adult-themed storytelling, because ultimately the people who grew up with Star Wars in the 70s are now in their 50s and getting into their 60s, and someone like me who grew up with the prequels and loved the originals in the mid-90s, I'm now in my mid-30s. You have to grow and develop storytelling with the older demographics. You just can't keep creating content for kids, because a lot of the kids now don't even give a shit about Star Wars, so you've got to provide content for the people who do care about Star Wars, and they are getting older. I'm not saying you give up on the other stuff, but you have to give us content like this as well, because people appreciate it and love it. And thankfully Tony gave us it. For me, out of 10, this is a fucking 9.5 out of 10. I would have gave it a 10, but for him abandoning that droid. It's a 9.5 out of
Well,
10 for me.
there was a few other things I probably would have deducted points because of, John, just in terms of some of the sort of filler stories just weren't, I don't feel were good enough. But in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter. But yeah, I'd probably go 9.5 myself. I think it was. I actually prefer this season to the first season. I
Yeah.
thought the first season was a really good, event, and yeah, I think they really did stick the land in this one, and just for that ending as well, a real gut punch at the very end with the baby. So
Yeah.
they knew what they were doing.
And Stephen, I think the introduction of Krennic elevated this season as well. I think one of the big criticisms of season 1 was there was no real serious threat. I mean, there was threats in there in terms of him being in the prison and having to get out of that prison. There was moments he was in a sticky situation, and you had the sort of cloak and dagger stuff with Luthen and Mon Mothma, this constant threat. Obviously, that gets ratcheted up in this season, and they're closing in a sense, and it's becoming more desperate trying to get information to try and bring down this empire. But bringing in Krennic, every time the guy's on the screen, he's like Michael Keaton and Spider-Man. You just feel dread. There's a sense of fuck. You need to be on your best behaviour here. You need to be switched on, because that guy's switched on. He sees everything,
Christoph
misses
Waltz
nothing.
character.
What's that, man? I missed you there.
Christoph Waltz character.
Absolutely, Stephen. Yeah. That's the type of character Krennic is. That's the type of presence that Ben Mendelsohn brings to the show. So bringing him in was an absolute masterstroke. I actually had concerns about bringing him in because I thought he'd overshadow it. He was too big a character for what we had. But they just got the balance perfectly. Didn't overuse him. And he was always there as a sort of ominous threat. So that elevated it. I agree with you. I think this is better than season 1. As an entire show, fucking phenomenal. Mark Streeter has commented, ultimately, Andor reminds me of Blade Runner. It allows you to feel like you are there in that world. Sets the tone and atmosphere so perfectly. And I think that's the thing. This kind of show, being grittier, boots in the ground kind of storytelling. You can enjoy lightsaber battles and force fights and things getting pulled in, and you can enjoy being in X-Wings and TIE fighters and being on the Death Star, but ultimately you're not relating to it. It's taking you away, and that's fine. You need escapism to a galaxy far, far away. But sometimes things like this can place you in a relatable story, because you can bond with characters like Cassian, who are a more human, sort of relatable character than a fucking Jedi Master who's choking Gamorrean guards and, well, he's a knight at that point. He's not a master, is he? You can't really bond. You can bond with Luke. You can. It's a relatable story, but I mean, I'm sadly not a Jedi. I think I could do what Cassian's doing. I don't think I could ever do what Luke Skywalker did. I still maintain I could fly one of those Naboo starfighters that little Anakin flew. And I think I could be quite handy behind a pod racer, because I've got supremely quick fucking reactions. But sadly not a Jedi. Let's go round it up though. What is your thoughts on Andor Season 2? Share your thoughts down below about the show, controversies, the great stuff, the bad stuff, everything in between. What would you rate it out of 10? Thoughts on our review, our reactions, anything you want to share at all, pop it down below in the comments section. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon on YouTube to see us doing further content like this in the future. Same thing over on Twitch, follow button, notifications button over there to see us live on a completely different platform doing the exact same thing, strangely enough. And also to be said is thank you for the comments.